Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. This is the Michael Miller trademark. Thank you and welcome. This broadcast is meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. I'm going on a little trip, so the only thing I have in my notes is the MMP carousel. So in Michael Miller Pilates and then carousel. And if you're familiar with my work, you'll know right where I'm going. And if you're not, let me just explain that a carousel goes around and around. And when you're standing outside of it, watching it, some things come into view and then you can recognize part of what you see and then it disappears. But because it's in rotation, and I'm not saying anything fancy happens, it comes around again. And you get to see the same thing that you saw originally, but a chance to have it be more familiar or become more clear. And yet again, though, it goes right by and you lose sight of it. To me, it's this carousel of spaced repetition from a study a long time ago out of Stanford about learning, and that you're exposed to it, you let it go, and then you're exposed to it again, and it's the spacing of repetition that allows something to become familiar. So whatever you're teaching and however you're teaching it, and maybe, of course, you already know this, right? It's all taught all over. But not only when you expose a student to something with spaced repetition in it, do they learn it better, but when you tell them that's what's happening, they relax even more. And the more relaxed they are, the more open they are to what's going by, and the more familiar it can become, because there's less pressure on having to get it, rather than on just being exposed to it. And in this case, we're talking about the MMP carousel. And MMP is a brand of Pilates, Michael Miller Pilates. As such, it's a point of view of Pilates. And it's a unique point of view because it takes its point of view directly from Joe's writings, just from his book, and 3 things from his book to get to the MMP point of view. And so you can start this wherever you wish, really. Whatever brings you to getting on the carousel or presenting the carousel or being the person pointing out what's going by without the pressure for you to communicate it or them to get it, knowing that it's all spaced repetition. So I guess that in and of itself, that means of being a teacher, where in teaching you're going mind to mind, asking your students to think. By announcing your intention to say this over and over again, so that to me is worth the broadcast right there. But in an attempt to actually take you on the MMP carousel, I would start with Joseph Pilates, the man, Joseph Hubertus Pilates. And it's his last name that's attributed to the Pilates method. And it is he that wrote the book, Return to Life Through Contrology, co-written by no relation of mine and some person named Miller and the man himself, Joseph. So, in a word, Pilates is exercise. And see, there's the carousel going around, okay? In one word, I heard Pilates is exercise. And then I've said some other stuff right now. And then in two words, so this is like another pass of the carousel, Pilates is corrective exercise. Okay? Now, Joe had a definition for it. First of all, he called it contrology, and he defined contrology as complete. His statement is, contrology is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. And I think that statement, the way he says that, matters because MMP looks at it as a statement of fact about a state of being in the body in the moment of the doing. That is the target as we perform the choreography or something that's sympathetic to it or resonant to it or reflective of it given the situation and the student and the capacities of being, thinking, and observing. So Joe named this exercise contrology. There we're coming around again and restating something really important because when you evaluate anything you have that has to do with Pilates, paying attention to or looking at control as a filter, which way is better, which movement is better, which idea is better, which order is better, and better, how do you mean better? And only one way of defining that is under control. So even if you cared not about Michael Miller Pilates at all, just to survive as a Pilates person, straight from Joe's original work, knowing his definition, like I just told you, contrology is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. See, there's another swoosh of the carousel going by. But it's twice I've said that there's a definition involved, and here's what Joe's definition is. Okay? And then in the very next paragraph in his book is how MMP instructors usually present this, because that's the next most germane thing that comes out of Joe's words in the next paragraph is that contrology develops the body uniformly. Now that's MMP's emphasis. The sentence goes on to say other stuff, but throughout most of the Pilates culture, at least used to be, whole body was still some character of Pilates. It was a whole body thing. And uniform is another way of saying whole body. And it's connected to Joe's words of contrology develops the body uniformly. Okay? So we're talking about Joe's definition and then his statement about contrology develops the body uniformly. And just by using Joe's words from his book, you're closer to Joe than using the word Pilates, which is never how he referred to his work, right? To his method, to the science of contrology. He wanted to consider the science. I think, just my opinion. There might be some fact to that, documentation of that. He wanted recognition by the medical community. And see, all of that science in his time was not ready for quantum physics. Was not ready for the capacity of observing and its significance in the experience we have as human beings. So all of that's the malarkey of Michael Miller-Pilates, right? A point of view. But the third thing that the Michael Miller-Pilates point of view comes off of, that's straight from Joe, is the sequence of his mat, the choreography, and the recognition that it is choreography and that the exercises are meant to be done in order and in flow. So that makes Joe's work a poem in and of itself that will always have significance in and of itself, regardless what anybody else makes of it, me included, right? The carousel. What would I want you to explain on the carousel? It's like everything I normally explain about the carousel has gone straight out of my mind. Well, okay, so 3 things straight from Joe. So basically what I'm doing is covering the 5 things as a presenter, and I'm doing it as though I'm pointing out what's going by in a carousel. So I'm not afraid to repeat myself, even alone, but especially within different contexts, to allow the familiarity to make what's pointed to graspable, have control of, right? So core nutension is a name that I gave to oppositional rotation between axes within the human body, specifically the 6 that are identified in the Michael Miller trademark, but not exclusively, but just at least within this context. It points to what I consider to be the fact of the biomechanics and the way the body is engaging itself to move through space. And that the more efficiently it engages in core nutension, the more uniform the engagement, so the lighter the load in space. And because tension between endpoints is sensational in gravity because of the tension you're making and how you can feel the difference in gravity, which is the point of all of this, okay? Pilates is survival training. And you're running from the dinosaur for survival. And so we're back to the man where I started on this whole carousel thing, and that Joseph Pilates was a survivor. And for me, that's the beginning of the thread of the story, because the name of Pilates we're talking about connects to a human being, and it's the human being that gives you the perspective through his point of view, his writings, his film, his pictures. And MMP takes on a point of view that, straight from what he wrote and the pictures he took and the film that he took, there's a cohesive methodology that has a purpose and has an effect that you can feel. The closer you get to classical, I think the more apparent it becomes what the feeling is and what you're after and how to get it and what the effects are. And yet getting to classical doesn't get you to an explanation of why. So on this merry-go-round run, at one level, knowing Joe and his work and all of his teaching being taught through lineage of those that knew him, always will be part of the texture and the fabric of the Pilates culture. But here in MMP is a point of view that comes straight out of Joe's book. And gives you a chance not only to understand the feeling that, the experience, I call it, that you have in the pursuit of Pilates, so what is that experience? Don't go all vague or silent. The experience is complete coordination of my being, thinking, and observing. And see, I took Joe's words, now we're MMPing it, and you're hearing me say that. In MMP, body, mind, and spirit is being, thinking, and observing. Capacities of the human being, any human being. Gender is not even an issue. The distribution of capacities has skews in terms of predominance of capacity, but the gift of Pilates is that it allows for an experience in my mind, in my world, in my profession, that allows a person of any capacity in three areas of being, thinking, and observing to find a complete coordination of those capacities. That's the issue. Because in MMP, that is an experience. And so on this carousel we're on, this view of Pilates called MMP completely points to a methodology to get to an experience. And that, as the sutra so well pointed out, it's in the pursuit of doing the choreography that meaning comes to how you go about accomplishing it, and using external tension via springs or straps or bands or bows or circles or whatever, but using the aid of external tension to help distribute more uniformly. That's what you heard. It comes from Joe's definition, right? Not definition, but statement. Contrology develops the body uniformly. And so, in this pursuit of uniformly, right, it's such a big leap to go from status quo and conventional to even get to Michael Miller Pilates, because first of all, you have to make the leap that the core is a grip at the hips. That's the first time you've heard that, but it's really... So the core is a grip at the hips. The body has the ability to make other grips or rotational dynamics, and in so doing, the strength in the human body, you ask me, go feel it for yourself, is that oppositional rotation between axes is the means of engagement that gives you what you're after. The most efficient muscular engagement going in order to facilitate the movement through space that you're after. So in my mind, I wondered where to go next, and here I am on a carousel. And the carousel says, well, where have I been? What can I repeat to make more familiar, or to give more points of attachment? And I came back to Joe being a survivor. Pilates is survival training, right? It's conditioning to survive is what it's all about. And as such, it is a poem of movement that is a reaction to reality. That's my latest way of saying that. So that's pretty new. But what is Pilates? Pilates is a conditioning method that is a reaction to reality. And so the purpose of the conditioning is it's survival training, and it's a reaction to the reality it finds itself in. And what's the biggest reality that the human being finds itself in? And usually that happens when someone comes in the door seeking to escape pain. And not to draw that out, but that it gets very practical, functional about, when does Pilates get taken seriously? Most often is by people that are in a circumstance where they're seeking to get out of it, like pain, and they want out, and they hope that Pilates can do that for them. And the player behind this, or the stage, is the reality that we find ourselves in, and primarily I point to gravity. Gravity brings the weight of our body in space that isn't held isn't structurally sound and non-stress producing, right? Stress left unchecked leads to pain, and pain leads the person in the door. And so in being an instructor and surviving, and they're trying to set the stage, or to note the stage of gravity and how much gravity influences or influenced, better word maybe, Joe's sculpting of the mat sequence in response to the reality that the human being finds itself in. The response being one of conditioning to prepare for whatever comes up next, and to escape what may have slowed you down or distracted you from being a normal, healthy person with pain-free. There's pain and there's pain-free. And a lot of time that's the distinction that the Pilates instructor finds as the issue pressing their students. So as much as you want to take and be drawn or draw Pilates toward your issue to escape the pain that your issue is causing you, the paradox is that this whole uniform thing that we've talked about, is the uniform engagement that you're after, and knowing how to make that uniform engagement. So in the year 4040, the biomechanics of core nutention might be known by a few more people. And no matter what happens in 4040, my point to you is that when you recognize something that works for you as an instructor, find peace in what you know and in how you deliver it, and not being strident or righteous. In the future, the math and the physics and the biomechanics of coronary tension will be more explored. So 2 things for me, and then I'm going to go. I identified coronary tension, and that's the means for uniform engagement. And the ideal within Joe's method that results in an experience that's real. So maybe that's way too deep or way too explicit or way too esoteric, but it's really very simple, and it only acknowledges that human beings have the capacity to observe, and that in Pilates, the pursuit of the ideal expression that you're after requires the participation of your observing to get the complete coordination of your being, thinking, and observing. Pilates isn't the complete coordination of body, mind, and more mind. It's something more than mind. There's a good title. So maybe after I get back from this trip. So life can live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add 2 and 2. And direct your thinking. All of those things are up to you. Geist.